Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we watch the Sunday morning news show so that you do not have to. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Maté. Good Monday morning. Great to start the week with you and some of the worst people on corporate TV. Our website is usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show and get bonus content. We've got ourselves a brand new regime change war. Trump and Israel bombing Iran in the early hours of Saturday for the second consecutive time in less than 1 year, and doing so also for the second time while pretending to engage in diplomacy. So they fooled us once and they fooled us twice, and now we are in the midst of another crisis in West Asia, launched by the guy who came to power claiming to be against regime change.
Right. Yep. And somehow he's going to try to pretend that this was preemptive and that this is consistent with America First.
All right, a lot to get to. Let's kick it off with Meet the Depressed.
Good Sunday morning. The world is on alert, with the United States together with Israel launching a war with Iran, with airstrikes across the country starting Saturday and continuing into Sunday morning.
Honestly, this is such a low bar, but it's actually kind of a nice change to hear the media not call this a retaliatory war, which is what or retaliatory strike, which is what they usually do. But this is just so undeniably instigated by the U.S. and Israel that they can't use their like preferred euphemism, and they can't shift the blame onto Iran like they usually do.
They can't claim that the U.S. is retaliating against Iran trying diplomacy. That's essentially
right. Exactly. Yeah.
What the U.S. retaliated for is Iran was trying to negotiate, and the U.S. retaliated by bombing Iran and destroying diplomacy.
Right. Okay, let's go back.
Targeting military and nuclear sites, killing Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And as President Trump told me in a phone call Saturday,
Okay, right off the bat, they're missing another deadly incident in the U.S. targeting, which was a massacre at a girls' school in southern Iran, which killed at least, and I'm being extremely conservative here, 115 people, mostly young girls.
Mm-hmm.
And now this school was located near an Iranian naval base, but it's still a school.
Right.
And there's still no justification for it. And there's absolutely no justification for not even mentioning it. A massacre of more than 100 children, and they can't even bring themselves to give that a passing mention. That's pretty typical, unfortunately.
Yeah. I wonder if they had a meeting and someone was like, okay, let's talk about these girls who were killed. And then someone else was like, nah, let's not do that. Or if it's just so built into it, like people just self-censor and know to not even suggest it as something to be covered.
And what's happened so far, and we're going to talk more about this, but the U.S. and Israel, they have not denied that they were behind this, which to me is a confirmation, because it's pretty easy to know where your high-tech missiles land, especially if they're used to massacre dozens of children. So they haven't denied it. All they said is we're investigating this, which to me is confirmation that they actually did it. They just want to delay the admission. And I guess because they delayed the admission, corporate media doesn't feel the need to acknowledge that it even happened until the U.S. and Israel confirm that they did it.
Right. Yeah, it makes no sense. And there's some rumors online from people who are absolute liars saying that Iran claimed responsibility for it, or it's been proven that they did it, and they're just bots who are saying that. But it's going a little viral.
What those people did is took a screenshot of like a pro-Shah Telegram channel. Okay, so like anti-Iranian government channel. They took a screenshot from that, and they also took a screenshot of an Iranian air defense missile being used in a totally different area of Iran. So anyway, yeah. Okay. More Meet the Depressed.
A large amount of leadership in Iran was also killed in the attacks. This morning, Israel says at least 40 military commanders were killed. Iran responding across the region, hitting a high-rise in Bahrain. A strike against an iconic hotel in Dubai. Civilians running from an incoming missile in Qatar, all home to U.S. military bases. And this morning, a new warning for Iran. President Trump posting that if Iran strikes back today, quote, we will hit them with a force that has never been seen before. And joining me now is Republicans.
Well, this warning is ridiculous because, A, when you bomb a country, kill its leader, they're going to retaliate. And in the case of Iran, they're retaliating by hitting the U.S. military bases that surround Iran in Gulf countries, which, by the way, Israel loves. Israel's so giddy right now because now you got Iran pushed into this corner. And what's it going to do? Because Iran deliberately limits the range of its missiles, contrary to all the propaganda we got from the Trump administration that Trump was saying in his State of the Union address that Iran is developing missiles that can hit the U.S.
Right.
It's not even true. And for now, Iran doesn't even have those missiles. So mostly short range missiles. So what can it do with those missiles? It can attack the military bases that surround it in Gulf countries. And yes, it has some missiles that can hit Israel too. But even there's only so much damage that it can do. The most of the damage it can do is in the short range.
Right.
And so Israel loves the fact that because it bombed Iran in this unprovoked attack, now Iran retaliates by hitting the Gulf, thereby increasing the gap, the already existing gap between Iran and the Arab states that surround it. And everyone gets to fight, and the U.S. and Israel get to come in and take the spoils. Sort of fulfilling the prophecy of Mike Huckabee, Trump's Israel ambassador, when he said that Israel can do whatever it wants in the Middle East, including stealing all of the Gulf countries' land. And sort of that theological agenda gets advanced by the apocalypse that Trump has unleashed with this war.
Right. Yeah, he's unleashing an apocalypse to bring on the apocalypse, which I guess is part of certain Christian visions of what is supposed to happen. So again, we are attacking we're attacking a government that we claim is a brutal theocracy, and we are using theocratic justifications.
Okay, well, one new justification that we're getting from the Trump administration is that after Trump said regime change will be a good thing in Iran, after saying that he's not going to stop until the government is overthrown, now all of a sudden the administration and its allies are claiming, yeah, we're actually not doing regime change here. This is not regime change. Don't worry. Here, for example, is Congressmember Mike Turner.
Can I ask you, in that targeting of the supreme leader that Senator Cotton talked about,
by the way, just a little heads up, you're going to see throughout this clip that he does a lot of dodging and goalpost moving. So, take a drink or don't, because you don't want to get alcohol poisoning, but take a sip of coffee every time he obfuscates, dodges, shifts, and moves the goalposts.
U.S. carry out that strike?
Well, I think this is very important. What's very clear here, and I think this is important to discuss. The President of the United States indicated that we were targeting the military infrastructure, and not the regime and not regime change. And yesterday, when I had the opportunity to talk to Secretary Rubio, I asked that question, and he was very clear in the answer that we did not target Khomeini and we were not targeting the leadership in Iran. So the aspect of that the United States was not undertaking regime change is very important. Our aspect of what the President of the United States has undertaken was this imminent threat that he described in his announcement, and that I think his response and his statement to the United States is an important aspect.
Okay, so this is why he's having such a hard time speaking here, is because he's telling the most bald-faced lie one could possibly make, which is, yes, we just launched a regime change war in tandem with Israel, and yes, we just killed Iran's supreme leader in a targeted attack, but it wasn't us. The regime change aspect of this, the assassination of the leader, that was Israel, okay? That wasn't us. Yes, we happened to bomb Israel at the exact same time. Yes, we happened to bomb Iran at the exact same time as Israel. And yes, as the New York Times reported, we shared targeting information with Israel as to where Khamenei, the supreme leader, was. But this is not a regime change war. The regime change aspect, that's Israel's business. That's not us. We don't have visibility into that. What we're doing is just combating an imminent threat from Iran, which, as we're going to get into, is also a complete lie.
Right. And it's even worse than what you said, Aaron, because he, of course, hasn't mentioned Israel. But that's an additional reason why he's so tongue-tied, because he's trying to both lie and not mention. He's trying to both say that it wasn't the U.S. without mentioning Israel. So his hands are kind of tied. Poor guy. His tongue is tied.
To be clear, you're not saying that Israel carried out that strike without the U.S. permission, green-lighting, buy-in?
The fact that Khomeini has been...
Okay, again, this is a really great direct dodge. Like his answer just has nothing to do with whether or not as he's just been asked by Margaret Brennan, whether or not Israel actually did this strike that took out Khamenei, and the U.S. didn't greenlight it. Okay, that's the question. Just bear that in mind as you hear his answer, because it's going to be hard for you to remember that was the question.
A murderous authoritarian who has killed an unbelievable number of Israelis. They have an absolutely, I think, a strong basis in which to do so. I think it certainly shows that if you're a murderous authoritarian and you're at risk, and it's better to be a friend of the United States than a murderous authoritarian. It's also interesting that
okay, so again, did not answer the question at all, right? Just kind of talked about vibes, about killing, authoritarian dictators, which is their go-to. And now watch this. This is a beautiful, crescendo.
Putin just said that he lost.
Speaking of murderous dictators,
that he lost a friend in friend of the United States than a murderous authoritarian. It's also interesting that Putin just said that he lost.
Speaking of murderous dictators,
that he lost a friend in losing Khamenei, and we certainly didn't see Khamenei as a friend.
So again, all they do when asked questions is shift to Khamenei bad. Khamenei bad, dictator like Putin. And of course, Brennan is totally, laughing along with it. How funny it is that Putin's a dictator and that Khamenei is a dictator. And this is why people are so rightly critical of all the times that people argue we shouldn't do something, but they use a disclaimer that we shouldn't have done the decapitation of Maduro, because even though he's an evil dictator, because blah, 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 for strategic reasons. Because every time they say something like that, they're basically like trying to prepare Americans for accepting these things and softening the response and the rejection of them. Because, maybe even if we shouldn't have done it, but the guy's so bad, that, of course, is like creating consent.
So in Mike Turner's case, yes, we killed Khamenei along with Israel. Yes, we launched this regime change war, but this is not regime change war. And also, it was totally justified, whoever did it,
exactly.
Because Putin likes the guy that we killed.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Really strong argument there from the Congress member. Okay, let's turn.
And by the way, before we turn, I just got to say, given that we have to stomach this stuff, please do like this stream. That is because, not for validation, but because we want to make sure that more people see it. Because as you can see, the media out there, besides shows like these, are very much at work trying to manufacture consent. And so we got to make sure that people tune into this one and fight the tech bros. So give it a like if you haven't already. All right.
Okay, another Republican supporter of Trump's non-regime change war. It's not regime change, okay, everybody? You heard Congressmember Turner. It's not regime change. So another supporter of Trump's non-regime change war in Iran, which happened to kill its leader, and Trump openly brags about trying to change the regime, is Senator Ted Cruz.
Now, if you believe that there was an ongoing nuclear weapons program, one of the top arms control experts out there, David Albright, has written there should be an immediate priority on rapid response operations to secure Iran's nuclear stockpiles right now. Can you assure the public that it will be secured? And if so, who is doing it if there are no Israeli or U.S. forces on the ground?
So there is no doubt that a year ago, Iran had an active and ongoing nuclear weapons program. We took.
Actually, a year ago, literally a year ago this month, Tulsi Gabbard, the nation's top intelligence official, went before Congress and said the exact opposite.
Right.
That Iran does not have an active nuclear weapons program. And the only reason they would possibly reorder one after it was shut down in 2003, so more than 20 years ago, would be because of the constant U.S.-Israeli threats to destroy Iran. But the U.S. intelligence report, and this reflects the consensus of U.S. intelligence agencies, is that Iran did not have a nuclear weapons program. As I think the host here is even going to remind Ted Cruz.
Out the vast majority of that at the end of the 12-day war. Where
that
Israel
U.S. intelligence assessment was not made public, if that is what was briefed to you.
Okay, so, that's a really polite way of saying he's lying, because she knows there is no U.S. intelligence assessment that Iran had a nuclear weapons program, because U.S. intelligence publicly said the exact opposite a year ago. But anyway, that's a really generous way of telling Ted Cruz.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. As opposed to saying what evidence do you have for that? Or the evidence doesn't bear that out? Or was Tulsi Gabbard lying?
We launched targeted bombs at the end of the 12-day war, where we dropped the equivalent of about a third of a nuclear weapon on those underground facilities like Fordo, which is built into the base of a mountain. The bunker buster bombs we used, Israel doesn't have those bombs. No other country has those bombs. We took them out last year. The Iranians were still hell-bent on rebuilding them. And one of the things we are doing right now is taking out their missiles, in particular, the southern missile belt. Right now, Iran is building roughly 100 missiles a month. They're actively building missiles to threaten their neighbors. And
they're firing some of them right now at their neighbors.
Yeah,
at our allies.
They're illustrating powerfully. They're attacking virtually every Arab neighbor that surrounds them. They are firing missiles at.
And that's our job. That's the job of America, to fire missiles at Arab neighbors of Iran.
He's making such a confused argument because he's now conflating a nuclear weapons program with a ballistic missile program. Sorry, not even ballistic. Yeah, a short-range missile program that can hit U.S. military bases in the countries surrounding Iran. So all of a sudden, he's gone from claiming that there's an Iran nuclear weapons program, which he says they were trying to rebuild. There was no enrichment going on at all. And even if there was enrichment going on, Iran never used that enrichment for a nuclear weapons program because they didn't have one. And that's the really important point that gets lost when guests like Ted Cruz are allowed to constantly deflect and change the subject. So now he's saying they had a missile program. That's right. Iran had a self-defense program. That's what its missiles are. And Trump was demanding that Iran give up those missiles. So he was demanding that Iran give up its right to self-defense. And because Iran wouldn't do that, that's one of the reasons why now Trump is bombing Iran.
Yeah. So many contradicting messages from our elected officials. And when I say contradicting messages, I mean lies.
But we are going to hear actually him admit,
after
lying so much, a little bit of truth.
That's how they get you. They sprinkle it. They sprinkle it in, the truth. Yeah.
Like they want to illustrate to the world just how malign they are.
But
it's right. It's Iran trying to illustrate to the world how malign they are. It's not the United States and Israel taking out children, taking out schoolgirls, taking out, targeting hospitals, targeting refugee camps, doing double taps, whether we're talking about people in boats in the Caribbean or ambulances trying to recover people who have been trying to reach people who have been shot. It's not Israel like executing people, executing ambulance workers. It's not Israel torturing doctors. It's not Israel raping prisoners. No, the people who are malign, the government that's malign is Iran for responding.
And they want to show it off like, hello world, we're Iran and we're so malign.
Right.
That when you attack us, we're going to respond. And we're going to respond not even by hitting, the top hegemon that attacked us, because we can't even hit you because we're not malign enough to develop weapons that can hit the U.S. We are going to hit your bases in the countries that surround us, and we're also going to hit Israel, which attacked us, and that's how malign we are.
Exactly.
Wow, so malign.
Interesting. Israel always has the right to self-defense, which somehow takes the form of, targeting journalists, targeting medical workers. That's the right to self-defense, which they invoke when they're not acting in self-defense. But when Iran is acting in obvious self-defense, somehow they are the bad guys.
All right. We've heard so much lying from Ted Cruz, but we've gotten through it because we're going to hear him actually blurt out a little bit of fact. Just stand by.
In terms of containing the risk, who's securing the nuclear material that you say still exists within Iran? Who's doing that?
Look, the quantity of nuclear material, I didn't say anything one way or another on that. What I said is they were building nuclear weapons a year ago, and our bombing took that out. They also had an ongoing desire to rebuild them. I don't have present-day intelligence on what progress they had made towards rebuilding nuclear weapons since we bombed their facilities. I have no indication that they were anywhere close to getting nuclear weapons because our bombing was devastating. And Margaret, that's one of the reasons I urged President Trump, now is the time.
So what he's doing there, so he just admitted, Oh yeah, okay. So I started off this answer by claiming that Iran was rebuilding its nuclear weapons program. Okay, but now he admits actually, oh yeah, I have no intelligence there when we're close to getting one. And the reason why he's doing that is because he's being sort of pressed into contradiction. If you really believe that Iran had an active nuclear weapons program, then as Margaret Brennan was asking, what is being done to secure the nuclear material? But it's actually nothing's being done because there is a nuclear weapons program. So that's why he has to say, don't worry about it, because they actually don't have a nuclear weapons program. So therefore, we don't have to take any responsibility for the threat that I started this answer by invoking.
Claiming. Exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, he's good on his feet. You got to admit it. He's good on his feet.
He's brilliant.
Good, shifting.
Brilliant. Yes. Very graceful evasions from Ted Cruz. Okay. Well, so after admitting that Iran does not actually have a nuclear weapons program, Ted Cruz also talked about, so what about those negotiations that were going on right before Trump bombed?
By the way, he does have a desire. They have a desire. So now he just mentioned they may have a desire to rebuild, or they may have had one. So now I guess the U.S. America First policy is preemptive war based on desire. Desire removing war. So if you have thoughts, they're going to go after you.
Did the president explain to you why he called off active diplomacy? Because at the very same time he was on that plane, the vice president of the United States was talking to the Omani mediator who was trying to get a deal and told us that they were close to one. Why not choose diplomacy?
Because the diplomacy was an abject failure. The Iranians approached the diplomacy with arrogance, with absolute hubris. They said they would not stop enriching. No matter what, they were going to continue to enrich uranium. They would not discuss zero enrichment. They claimed a right to enrich uranium in underground bunkers with no supervision.
100% false. They claimed a right to enrich under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which they've signed, and under which they have a right to enrich for peaceful purposes. And they developed that technology at great cost, and they wanted to maintain some token amount of it. And that's what the Omani foreign minister, who was interviewed by CBS News, talked about, that Iran had agreed actually to zero stockpiling of the uranium that they enriched. So basically, as what happened under the nuclear deal, the 2015 JCPOA that Trump killed, Iran would enrich, but then the uranium would be shipped outside of the country to Russia, and then the energy would be transferred back to Iran. And Iran had agreed to zero stockpiling of what it enriched at a very low level, all of which, contrary to what Ted Cruz claimed, would be under international supervision.
Right. Yes, they were allowed up to 300 kilograms of low enriched uranium stockpiles.
So he's just lying. He's just lying. He talks about the arrogance. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's arrogant to send as your negotiators your real estate buddy and your son-in-law, who doesn't even have an official government position, and who the last time they negotiated with Iran, in the case of Steve Witkoff last June, pretended to negotiate only for Trump to blow up the talks by bombing Iran, which they've now done for a second time. So talking about arrogance, how about pretending not once but twice to negotiate only to launch a regime change war?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned that it was the Omani foreign minister who confirmed that, right? Who said that they were close to a deal, and that they had agreed to zero stockpiling of enriched uranium, which is what is needed to possibly, if one even decided, make a bomb. And Margaret knows this because not only was this revealed during an interview on CBS, but it was revealed during an interview with Margaret Brennan. She was the person interviewing the Omani foreign minister. So she really should be pushing back on this more.
As President Trump said on Friday when he was with me in Texas, his line was zero enrichment, and the Iranians refused to discuss it. They also refused to discuss their proxies. They refused to discuss Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis.
Again, she just lets him lie about something she knows because she interviewed the foreign minister, the Omani foreign minister, who said they had agreed to zero enrichment.
And he's also telling another egregious lie here when he says that Iran refused to discuss their missiles and their proxies.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't said that. He's about to say that.
No, he just said that.
Oh,
He
okay.
just said that. And so, and you know who else agreed with that? Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff agreed to focus the talks just on the nuclear issue. That's why, after the meetings concluded, the Omani foreign minister said that they had made great progress. And guess what? There's going to be new meetings next week on 2 different levels. And if you subscribe to Useful Idiots, I think in the full version of the interview we did on Thursday, as we were recording it, I got comment from an Iranian official who was present at the talks, which I shared. This was on Thursday, who said the same thing, that the progress was made and we have the framework of a deal and we have follow-up meetings scheduled for this week now. So Iran was led to believe that the U.S. was okay with their refusal to discuss their missiles, which is essentially their way of defending themselves, and their relationship with their allies, including Hezbollah. So it was, in fact, on the issue of missiles and proxies, quote unquote, it was the U.S. that was duplicitous by pretending that it was okay to just address the nuclear issue.
Right. Yeah. And then punishing them for doing what they said that they didn't have to do.
And President Trump understood that the Iranian, quote, negotiation was just a stall tactic, and that the only response, my advice to him, I said, there's only one deal you should accept. And it's,
by the way, he's really claiming a lot of credit for this. Keeps talking about how much time he was spending with Trump, what he told him to do. He was in Texas.
The deal that you offered Maduro, which is if you want to leave and flee the country, you can do so. Anything else is unacceptable. And Khamenei made his choice.
Well, there's
first of all, Khamenei wasn't offered that choice. It wasn't conveyed to him, either leave the country or we're going to like bomb you. I mean, not that he would have accepted anyway, but Ted Cruz is just, I think, engaging in some fan fiction there. And again, the stalling tactics were solely done by the U.S. side, which used the negotiations to stall again for another regime change war they've been planning for a very, very long time. And that's been borne out by all the reporting. If you read Barak Ravid, who's that Axios reporter, Israeli, very close to the White House and to Israeli officials, he talks about, just like with last time, this was planned for a long time. And they took their moment Saturday morning when there was a meeting with Khamenei and other senior officials. They knew where he was, and they bombed him. And they stalled until they could carry that out. That's what happened.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Total projection, total inversion. Again, it's not, I mean, I find myself saying this a lot, but it's not just a lie. It's the actual inversion of the truth, the exact opposite. So whatever they're saying about Iran is what is true about the United States. So in a way, they are telling the truth. They're just lying about who did it and who it applies to. Baby steps towards the truth. Yeah.
There's a Hungarian saying that my dad likes to quote often, Marie. It says it's something to the effect of, it's such a lie that not even the opposite is true.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what these guys are. They're just such egregious liars on every single front. And let's go to arguably the biggest liar of all, the guy who's also the happiest guy in the world right now, and that is Senator Lindsey Graham, who's been going on these Sunday shows that we've been covering for a long time to advocate for exactly what is now taking place.
In a social media post Sunday, President Trump wrote this, quote, "Hopefully the IRGC and police will peacefully merge with the Iranian patriots and work together as a unit to bring back the country."
Okay, that's a little hard when right now Israel, following its tactics in Gaza of destroying society, is targeting Iranian police stations. They bombed the police headquarters of Tehran. I think since we've gone to air, they've launched more attacks. So Trump is saying, yeah, come on, police in Iran, let's be peaceful and let's come together. Yeah, as we're destroying your headquarters and killing you. I'm sure they'll go really well.
Yeah, that'll be great.
The greatness it deserves. Is hope the plan for the future of Iran?
No, the future of Iran is going to be determined by the Iranian people. The new Iran, whatever it is, whether it's a cleric or a representative democracy, our goal is to make sure it cannot become, again, the largest state sponsor of terrorism. That's a win for us.
But is there a plan to make sure that happens, Senator? Is there a plan? Does the president have a plan to guarantee that happens?
No, it's not his job or my job to do this. How many times do I have to tell you?
He really gets annoyed by this question, by the way.
Our job is to make sure Iran is no longer the largest state sponsor of terrorism, to help the people reconstruct a new government, no boots on the ground. We don't own, this idea you break it, you own it. I don't buy that one bit. It's
By the way, that's what Colin Powell said about Iraq.
in America's interest to make sure the Ayatollah is dead. He's dead.
So we just are providing the opening for Iran by removing one regime, which of course we always call a regime, even though there's no reason to call something a regime versus a government unless they're our adversary. That's the only thing that determines it. But we're just providing that opening for them. And now it's on them to figure out what to put in its stead.
Yeah, he's saying it's our job to destroy the country and help the people, including by massacring over 100 children, as again, these shows have been avoiding mentioning. Right. And what happens next? Yeah, that's up to Iran. And he cares about Iran not, quote unquote, sponsoring terrorism, by which he means supporting groups that resist Israeli aggression. Yeah. That's what he means. And that's why Iran's been targeted for so long, is because they're one of the few states that provide active support to others who resist Israeli aggression and don't accept the greater Israel project and the vision of people like Mike Huckabee, who says that Israel can steal as much Middle East land as it wants. And that's why Iran and its society have to be destroyed in the eyes of people like Lindsey Graham. Mike
Huckabee is right. He's a total Israel cuck. It's a good thing. We should start calling him. But yeah, again, every single time that anyone calls Iran the largest state sponsor of terrorism, it's really rich, because that award, that prize really goes to the U.S. Well, it's a tie. It's like a semifinal between the U.S. and Israel, because those are the governments that are directly funding or directly engaging in the wars that, quote unquote, wars, really a genocide in the case of Gaza. In this case, attacks that kill school children, kidnapping the leader of a sovereign country, in the case of obviously Venezuela, spearheading this murderous blockade of Cuba, creating a humanitarian crisis. Really, we should be giving the credit where it's due. The largest sponsors of state terrorism really goes to Israel and the U.S. But I think Lindsey's being modest.
And, there was a brief moment where the U.S. and Iran were cooperating against what are widely seen to be terrorist groups, including ISIS, in Iraq. They were cooperating there. But Trump blew that up by assassinating Qasem Soleimani, who was heading that fight for Iran. And meanwhile, backing the effort, as he recently bragged about, to install the founding leader of al-Qaeda in Syria as the leader of Syria. And the reason the U.S. did that is because Syria was a part of the axis, including Iran, that resisted Israel. And so from the U.S. point of view, an Israeli point of view, they'd rather have the former leader of al-Qaeda leading Syria than have a leader like Assad, who was an ally of Iran. That's how they really feel about terrorism. And Iran and the U.S. also cooperated after 9/11 against the Taliban.
Right.
But that was blown up when George W. Bush decided to suddenly declare Iran to be part of the axis of evil.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yes, they would rather kill someone who fought ISIS in the case of Soleimani.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's turn to Trump. Now, this is the guy who came to power claiming to be against regime change wars. He promised, no new wars under me. I'm the peace president. And now he's got to deal with the fact that he's launched a regime change war in West Asia, and U.S. service members are dying. They're dying for Israel. As we're recording this, I believe the U.S. death toll has risen to 5 from Iran's retaliatory attacks. And here's Trump announcing some of those deaths.
Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, even as we continue the righteous mission for which they gave their lives. We pray for the full recovery of the wounded and send our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen. And sadly, there will likely be more. before it ends. That's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case. But America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most punishing blow to the terrorists who have waged war against basically civilization. They have waged war against civilization itself.
Projection. I mean, you're waging war against civilization, including a country with a really long and proud history that is now being destroyed because you're forcing U.S. troops to sacrifice themselves, not for your nation, but for the nation of Israel, and specifically its extremist government that insists on wiping out anybody who opposes its domination of the region.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously it reminds me of that's just the way it is. Some things will never what is it? Some things will always be the same. That's just the way it is. Changes.
Yeah, that's what Trump is saying. To U.S. soldiers who are dying for Israel. That's the way it is.
Right.
You sign up thinking you're serving your country, hopefully getting some medical benefits, a college degree out of it. But sorry, that's the way it is. You got to give your life for Israel.
Right. And by the way, one thing I realized, I didn't prepare this ahead of time, but I do think it's very relevant to bring up, is the fact that Jonathan Karl tweeted out that President Trump told me tonight the U.S. had identified possible candidates to take over Iran, but they were killed in the initial attack. Quote, the attack was so successful, it knocked out most of the candidates. Trump told me it's not going to be anybody that we were thinking of because they're all dead. Second or third place is dead. So that is how punishing the attack has already been. So it's going to get even more punishing, according to.
So Trump has killed the people who he was thinking about using to replace the initial leader that he killed.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, that's how good they are at killing.
Yes. Yes.
And,
okay.
And this is why Lindsey Graham is so defensive about what's coming next. Because it's like, well, we had one guy in mind, but we killed him. Then we had a runner up, but also dead. So, yeah.
All right. So did you know that not only, as we heard from so did you know that not only, as we heard from Congressmember Mike Turner before, that we're not doing regime change here, even though Trump has said this is regime change. Also, we're not even waging a war. This is according to Senator Markwayne Mullin.
And by the way, Aaron, earlier we praised praised Ted Cruz for how gracefully he was lying and obfuscating and moving the goalposts and contradicting himself. So Markwayne Mullin could probably take some tips from Cruz on how to do this gracefully, because he's not a graceful guy. You'll see.
In his announcement about this military operation, President Trump warned Americans to prepare for possible troop deaths. If this war drags on for weeks or longer, for that matter, and U.S. casualties mount, are you confident that the American public will consider this a noble mission and tolerate growing U.S. military losses?
Well,
I just realized it is a Nobel mission, not noble, but it's a Nobel mission, because the way you win a Nobel Peace Prize these days is by being, violent and belligerent. So maybe though it's not a noble mission, it's a Nobel one. That's another idea about how we could rebrand it.
First of all, I'm going to push back. This isn't a war. We haven't declared war on Iran. We're not at war with the Iranian people. We had to remove a murderous regime that's been attacking the United States for 47 years. Him and his.
Okay, so now I'm confused because we heard earlier this is not regime change. Okay, now we're hearing, okay, yes, it is regime change, but it's not a war.
Right, right. And this is a guy, remember, he famously, we covered this, he himself was saying it's not regime change in a basically within like the same sentence that he was laying out, it is regime change.
I would love to get Markwayne Mullin and Mike Turner together so they can argue about what this is. So it's like, no, this is not a war. It's regime change. No, it's not regime change. It's a war.
Right.
And maybe they can find some accommodation, some way to meet in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. And then we throw in Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham, and then you have, it's not a regime change, it's just a regime destruction. No change on our part.
It's very head spinning. It's very confusing. But this is why, we're not elected to high office, and these geniuses are.
Right.
So they can explain these difficult concepts to us in such clear ways.
It would be like the Four Stooges.
Say it again.
It would be like the Four Stooges if we got them together.
killed thousands and murdered thousands of Americans for literally 47 years. You heard the president's announcement. He went through all the attacks that they've had through multiple presidents, and the straw.
Oh yes, this is a doozy. So Trump, in his initial video address from Mar-a-Lago, gave a list of times where he says Iran has killed Americans. He included the bombing of the USS Cole in 2000. Okay, right. The problem there is that was carried out by Al-Qaeda, which is a mortal enemy of Iran, which Iran fought, for example, in Syria, whereas we supported Al-Qaeda. So Trump, in trying to come up with a reason for why he's launching a new war, cited cited attacks that he blamed on Iran that weren't actually even committed by Iran. And you can go back, even the claims about Iran being behind explosives that killed U.S. soldiers in Iraq. There's even people who contest that. There's a book by Scott Horton called Enough Already, which goes through the evidence, which challenges this claim that Iran was behind a lot of these IEDs that killed U.S. troops, which, of course, people fail to mention happened after the U.S. invaded Iraq. And whatever happened there, when you invade a country that's next to you and you're talking about, as the Bush administration was, about regime changing Iran next, Iran is usually going to act to make sure that you stay in Iraq and don't come over into your country to do regime change in Tehran. But anyway, all these claims about why we had to go to war, there's so many contradictions and just outright lies.
That I would say that broke the camel's back, or the final straw, is we're never going to allow the #1 world sponsor of terror to be able to get a nuclear weapon. There was no doubt that they were building delivery systems to affect our interest and our assets all around that region.
Okay, so look what he's doing here. He's again conflating a nuclear weapons program with a missile program. He says we're not going to allow them to have a nuclear weapon, and there's no doubt they were building delivery systems to threaten our interests. Yes, they were building missiles to defend themselves. That's what countries do, especially when you threaten them for 47 years.
Right. Yeah. And who has attacked whose presidents and leaders and prime ministers? The U.S. is the one that removed Mossadegh. And
because Wolf Blitzer doesn't want to do his job as a journalist, he won't say to Markwayne Mullin, you're conflating a nuclear weapons program which didn't exist with Iran building missiles to defend itself. So it's a really casual way in which these people lie. They suggest they're talking about a nuclear weapons program, and really they're actually talking about Iran simply having a conventional military force to defend itself.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Markwayne Mullin, for that. Let's turn to Democrats.
Pleasure to hear from you. Yeah.
How are the Democrats pushing back on this? And are they seizing the political momentum here, where Trump has launched a regime change war, the very kind he claimed to be against, the very kind that most people don't support? Polls are showing that there is not majority support at all for what Trump has done. Are Democrats seizing the moment to call this out and challenge the president? Well, let's check in, starting with Senator Mark Kelly.
Start with what you just heard from Senator Lindsey Graham. You heard him argue the world is now safer because the supreme leader of Iran is dead. Do you agree with him? Is the world now safer, Senator?
Well, I agree with that part. I mean, it's a good thing that the Supreme Leader is gone and some of the folks around him. And I have to give a shout out to the young men and women of the U.S. military who, by their skill and, focus on the mission and determination and patriotism, were able to conduct this operation. So that part's a good thing.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark Kelly, who I confuse with Markwayne Mullin because they don't sound that far apart. Shout out to the young service members who are being sacrificed right now for this regime change war that I have to applaud, because I'm happy that, kind of like in The Wizard of Oz, people are happy that the Wicked Witch is dead.
Right.
Same thing like with the Ayatollah. No matter the consequences to everybody, including American service members who are dying, and of course the people of Iran.
Yeah. And you just referred to the lack of popularity, lack of support for this war. And a new poll conducted by Reuters and Ipsos found that only 1 in 4 Americans approve of this attack on Iran. 43% oppose the war, and 56% believe Trump has been / is too willing to use military force. So bear that in mind, which makes the weak response from the Dems all the more pathetic. Now, something that Markwayne Mullin said that we should give him credit for is that He has not. It's true that there was no war declared, because as a lot of Democrats are saying, it's kind of like the strongest thing that they can say is he should have come to Congress to make his case. But and the War Powers Act is being debated. But again, it's really pathetic that that's the strongest response. And even Mark Kelly, actually, another part in the interview, was asked whether he would vote to invoke the War Powers Act, and he's like, I don't know yet. Have to see. We'll have to see.
Well, stay tuned for that one. Here's another Democratic Senator, Tammy Duckworth.
Listen, I'm glad that Khamenei is dead. He ordered the massacre and murder of thousands of people. Protesters are protesting for democracy. My problem with this whole thing is how President Trump has gone about doing this. He promised Americans that he would get us out of forever wars, and yet here he is on his own, launching an attack on Iran without congressional oversight when there appears to be no imminent threat. So he's really in violation of the War Powers Act. And frankly, he needs to come to Congress or send his representatives, the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and justify to us why it is that he should have been able to do this. And if there's no justification, then we should have a vote in the Senate on the.
It's not a matter of if there's no justification. You should have a vote in the Senate, no matter what, because a president requires congressional authorization to go to war, which he's just done. And Tammy Duckworth is basically saying that, yes, I accept all the propaganda used to justify this war. Yes, I'm thrilled with the results so far, but we need to have at least a consultation on it.
Right. It's all process-based.
Yes. Okay, let's hear now from Senator Mark Warner. He is the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. What does he think about Trump launching a regime change war against Iran?
Ironically, Dana, if the president had chosen to take one of these actions back in early January, when the Iranian people were on the streets in the millions, you could make a case because that might have nudged the regime into dramatic change. He couldn't make that choice because the aircraft carrier that would have assisted that operation was off the coast of Venezuela at that point. And our allies in the region, in Europe in particular, who would have been helping us make that choice in January, were very focused on the president's, crazy folly around Greenland. So the fact that he has chosen now, why now?
Yeah, this is
hearing critique.
Yeah, we pointed this out before. We gave him credit for this. To be fair, he's made this point before. Really, the problem with regime change wars is you just got to have a better calendar set up. You want to make sure that you're coordinated. I mean, the reason he opposed the attack on Maduro, the illegal kidnapping of Maduro, is not for moral reasons. It's just that it doesn't it ties you up for other regime changes.
If the world survives this moment, this latest U.S. triggered disaster, and one day history is looking back on the people who stood up to Trump as he launched this disastrous war on a major country in West Asia, the highlights will include Senator Mark Warner rising up to say, "Sir, why didn't you do this in January?
Yeah, exactly.
Why did you wait till late February? Why did this happen in January?"
Yeah.
With orchestral music, it'll be really dramatic.
Right. It's like the new "Have Ye No Shame."
Voices of conscience like Mark Warner, who demanded this be done in January, not late February.
Right.
So thank you for that, Mark Warner. And again, look, the part that people omit when they talk about how Iran was responsible for killing thousands. First of all, the U.S. was responsible for helping Israel kill hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza, which tells you all you need to know about this professed concern for human rights. And the other part that gets omitted here is that the U.S. deliberately triggered those protests in Iran, as they bragged about, by destroying its economy, by hurting the Iranian people. Scott Bessent bragged about this. Mike Pompeo bragged about this. And the other part they leave out is that, as Mike Pompeo admitted, the U.S. and Israel were covertly supporting infiltrators who carried out violent attacks on Iranian forces. At least dozens of Iranian forces were killed in these protests, which shows that this is not a question of just peaceful protesters going out and the government having a harsh crackdown. The government was responding to U.S. triggered, and at least some element of it, not entirely, but some element, was covertly backed by the U.S. and Israel to create chaos and triggered like a very kind of crackdown that people like Mark Warner can then say justifies the U.S. bombing the country in January, not in February.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for that, Mark Warner. But let's hear more because, listen, Mark Warner actually does something useful here where he acknowledges what the intelligence actually says about one of the administration's pretexts for launching the war, which they claim, yes, we did this, but we had to act because we picked up an imminent threat to U.S. forces in the region from Iran. And here's Mark Warner on that.
The president said in the video he put out that there was a possibility that the Iranians could use missiles that could strike the American homeland. Senior administration officials said that the timing was chosen because they saw intelligence that the Iranians were going to launch preeminent strikes. Did you see any of that information?
The Iranians have been working on increasing their military capabilities. And remember, this was supposed to be military capabilities, at least on the nuclear front, that the president himself said were obliterated based upon the strike of 7 months ago. I saw no intelligence that Iran was on the verge of launching any kind of preemptive strike against the United States of America.
None.
None.
So there you go. This is something that the White House trotted out after they bombed Iran, which is that we had to act. And of course, they said this anonymously as well to the outlets like the Wall Street Journal, that we had to act because we had intelligence of an imminent strike. Israel has long used this tactic too, that we had to bomb the country and steal their land because they were about to attack us. That was essentially its rationale for the June 1967 war, when it launched a quote unquote preemptive strike, which happened to leave it in control of all this Arab territory that it wanted to steal, including the West Bank, Gaza, Golan Heights, and the Sinai. So that's the Trump administration using the same playbook. And Mark Warner, who was briefed on this intelligence by the Pentagon, says there was actually nothing to support it, that all Iran was doing was preparing to be attacked by the U.S. and Israel. And when you're attacked by the U.S. and Israel, of course, you're going to retaliate then, but not beforehand.
Yeah, a couple things. One is that I'm pretty sure that Dana Bash meant preemptive strike when she said preeminent strike. And of course, what Warner is admitting when he admits that there wasn't that they were not actually doing what we claimed, right? That they were not preparing for nuclear war. He is admitting that this was a preemptive strike by the United States, not by Iran. And actually, it was preemptive in the fact that it preempted peace.
Yes.
Didn't preempt war, preempted
exactly.
peace. Yeah.
Exactly right. It preempted diplomacy, which is going on. And again, where the mediator, Oman, and also the Iranian side, as we reported here on News Affiliates directly from hearing from Iranian official, they've made good progress because the U.S. was pretending to make good progress so they could launch a war at a time of their choosing. All right. Well, here is something very rare we're going to hear on corporate TV, which is somebody actually acknowledging a little bit, not entirely, but a little bit of the actual history behind decades of conflict between the U.S. and Iran, which is the U.S. doing things like backing a coup that overthrew Iran's government, and then even supporting Saddam Hussein when he killed hundreds of thousands of Iranians, including with chemical weapons. This comes from Democratic Senator Tim Kaine, who's sponsoring a resolution to, force the administration to seek congressional authorization for war. That's what Tim Kaine's doing. And here he's going on Fox News with a very rare acknowledgement of just a little bit of decades of U.S. terror against Iran.
One of your colleagues, I am guessing, will not vote for your war powers resolution is Senator Ted Cruz. He had this to say after the strikes. He says the Iranian regime has been terrorizing and murdering Americans for 47 years, including innocent civilians, our service members, and American leaders. The Ayatollah has repeatedly tried to assassinate President Trump. Now they're seeking nuclear weapons and the ability to hit the American homeland. There's no question they're also funding proxies like Hamas, Hezbollah, many other troublesome groups around the globe. Do you not consider those imminent and ongoing threats?
They're not imminent threats to the U.S. homeland. Senator Cruz is right, but he's told you half of the story. He hasn't told you of the half of the story of the U.S. toppling the Iranian government in 1953, that we were friends before that, but it's been 70 years of back and forth, U.S. shooting down an Iranian civilian aircraft, the U.S. backing Iraq in a devastating war against Iran in the 1980s. This has been back and forth between the two nations, and if more war was the answer, then we would have found the answer before now. The right answer now is for the president to do what he told the American public. He said he would be a president of peace, not war. He would stop forever wars. Instead, what you've seen is, let me count them, Iran twice, Cuba, Venezuela, strikes in the Pacific, strikes in the Caribbean, strikes in Nigeria, and threatening strikes in Cuba, Mexico, Colombia, Greenland. Meanwhile, what he said...
Whoa. Is Tim Kaine watching Useful Idiots? He's actually speaking the truth about these regime change wars and illegal strikes.
He would do as president is bring prices down. Prices are up, growth is slowing, jobs are down, and we're going to see energy costs go up even more because of this ill-considered war launched by the president without any real provocation.
We can talk about.
So there you go. Some rare facts on corporate TV. Now, I have some quibbles here and there. I mean, I don't think he needs to accept Ted Cruz's premise that Hamas and Hezbollah are these existential threats when they exist for one reason, which is to resist Israeli tyranny. And if the U.S. wasn't backing Israeli tyranny, wasn't backing Israel as it denies Palestinians the right to self-determination, there'd be no threat, quote unquote, to confront from Hamas or Hezbollah. Right. But anyway, it will take a long time before anybody on corporate TV can say what is the truth, which is that the core issue of all of this is Israel's denial of Palestinians of the right to self-determination. It'll be a very long time before that gets allowed. But Tim Kaine is saying a lot of truth here and deserves credit for it because it goes a lot farther than pretty much all of his Democratic colleagues, because he's acknowledging some of the history, which entails, as he talked about, the U.S. waging a coup in Iran, the U.S. backing Saddam Hussein against Iran, and the U.S. shooting down at the end of the Iran-Iraq war, in the last days of it. This was the U.S. way of supporting Saddam Hussein, was by doing things like shooting down an Iranian civilian jetliner. That's because the U.S. was at that time basically intervening on Saddam Hussein's side. And Tim Kaine talking about that is a very rare acknowledgement of some of the truth.
Right. Really bizarre. Doesn't feel right. Feels awkward.
Okay. Well, we mentioned earlier that this war kicked off with the U.S. and Israel carrying out bombings that included a girls' school in southern Iran. And the death toll is at least 115 people. And I think it's a lot more than that, but that's the very minimum. And most of them are girls aged 7 to 12.
Because Aaron, as we all know, the United States and Israel are very concerned with women's rights and girls' rights. And they love to point out how repressive Iran is apparently for women and girls. So they had to liberate these girls by killing them.
Yes, exactly. So this has not gotten very much attention in corporate media, but there was a rare mention of it with Dana Bash asking the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, about it. And this is his response.
President Herzog, at least 148 people were apparently killed in a strike on a girls' school in Iran. That's according to local officials. CNN has not independently verified those numbers. Do you know what happened?
By the way, it would be great if she said that when Israel made claims about numbers. You don't ever hear her making that disclaimer that this is according to the Israeli government. CNN hasn't confirmed those numbers. It's only when the government is a government that we don't like that we have to say stuff like that.
Happened there?
Sorry, let me just rewind.
Do you know what happened there?
No, we don't know. And we are trying to verify it, and we don't have any facts to that effect. And we don't shy away from checking anything. But we also have to understand that part of the strategy of this jihadist movement is to base its infrastructure of terror, let's say missiles, long-range missiles, in civilian surroundings. So I don't know. And believe me, I care for every citizen who lost his or her life. But what we have to do right now is offer a better future for millions and millions of Iranians.
Okay. All right. That's it. I mean, it's only so much we can take from this guy. But basically, he's admitting that, yes, the U.S. and Israel were behind this.
Yeah.
If U.S. and Israel were not behind a missile strike that killed dozens of young girls. They would say that within a second. It's very easy to track these assaults. So this is his confirmation that they did, because he's blaming Iran by placing its terror infrastructure close to schools. Yeah, by which, yes, there was an Iranian naval base close to this school. But again, the 100% responsibility is not on Iran for, locating a school close to a base, but for on Israel and the U.S. for attacking Iran and killing all these people. And so this is his way of basically acknowledging that the U.S. and Israel did it.
And also, the whole human shields argument, which is always invoked by Israel and then by the U.S. in defense of Israel. Why in 2021, the same year, by the way, that Isaac Herzog was elected as president, Israel finished a 10-year project building the IDF in quotes, IOF military headquarters underneath the heart of Tel Aviv, and have soldiers living throughout apartments in the heart of the city. So I hope everyone asks about Israel using human shields, making their soldiers human shields, and everyone who lives around.
And what is Israel and the U.S. doing today as we're broadcasting? As is totally predictable, this is not just a campaign where they selectively target military infrastructure and Iran's leadership, which of course they have no right to do to begin with. But they're also now bombing other infrastructure. They're bombing crowded parts of Tehran. They're basically pursuing the Gaza strategy, which is just destroy a society to collapse it. That's what they're carrying out now in Iran, which is entirely predictable. So the only terrorists here, President Herzog, are the Israelis and the U.S.
Yeah. Let's play a little bit more from Herzog because he has a couple more gems. Apologies, everyone.
And hundreds of millions of people all over the Middle East. Because so long as Iran pursues its plan, which is against America, against Israel, against anything that does not accommodate their fanatic ideological belief, which means moderate Muslims, Jews, and Christians, they will never rest. And that is why we have to change this course, and that's why we have to change the equation and move forward by, undermining their capabilities of creating havoc throughout the region.
Okay, so it's Iran that's creating havoc around the region. It's Iran that is fanatical, has a fanatical ideology. Again, you're being too modest, Isaac Herzog, because you are an agent of chaos. Israel's an agent of chaos. And if you want to talk about fanatical ideological missions, how about, the avowed Jewish supremacist Ben-Gvir and terrorist vowing to take land from the Nile to the Euphrates, and the plan to restore Greater Israel to its ancient biblical homeland. And even Yair Lapid, the liberal, quote unquote, liberal opposition, quote unquote, opposition leader, voiced his support for a greater Israel recently. And he said, Zionism is based on the Bible. Our mandate over the land of Israel is biblical, and the biblical borders of the land in Israel are clear. Therefore, the borders are the borders of the Bible. So these are the people calling Iran fanatical.
And the part that always gets left out is that Iran has repeatedly supported the global consensus for resolving the fundamental issue at the heart of all West Asia strife, which is Israel's denial of Palestinian rights. Iran supported in 2017 a resolution from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation calling for a two-state solution, saying that Israel can have peace if it finally gives Palestinians the right to their own state in just 22% of Palestinians' stolen homeland. Iran supported that. This is how Israel responded to that. This is a headline from the outlet Al Monitor. It's written by one of Israel's most experienced diplomatic correspondents, Akiva Eldar. Okay, and this is what Israel did back then. This is a headline. Israel ignores Iran's support for Arab peace initiative. Israel keeps silent while Iranian President Hassan Rouhani signs on to the resolution of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation supporting Israeli-Palestinian peace based on a two-state solution. So Israel, which claims it just wants peace, blah, 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 just wants to live in security. When Iran supported the global consensus for how that can happen, Israel ignored it because Israel is only concerned about stealing Palestinian land and denying them their right to self-determination. So that is the real agenda that is at the heart of all strife in West Asia, which, of course, you just cannot talk about on corporate TV. And just a few weeks ago, the Iranian foreign minister, Araghchi, gave a speech in Doha that essentially repeated the exact same thing, although he wasn't as explicit, because now, after a genocide, it's a lot harder for anyone to like talk so openly about making peace with Israel because they're so evil. But he's basically said the problem is occupation. And for there to be peace in the region, there has to be an end to Israeli occupation, which of course was totally ignored because the US and Israel are completely committed to occupation and supremacy, not sovereignty and security for everybody.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, speaking of Araghchi, he went on corporate TV and amazingly, he was asked just one of the silliest questions I've ever seen posed to any official. This is as his country is under attack, okay, by the US and Israel. And watch what he gets asked by an anchor with NBC News. This is Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi.
Clarity. So for clarity, you said that your missiles cannot reach the United States by design, that you do not want to reach the United States, but you also said it would be necessary as a defensive vehicle that you could if necessary. So to be clear, are you committing that Iran is not and will not build missiles that would have the capability to reach the United States?
I can confirm, yes.
Sir, if that's a red line for you, why is attacking U.S. military bases abroad justified?
But because they are attacking us. They are U.S. military, installations, facilities, bases who are attacking us. We are under attack. Why don't you, recognize this fact? We are under the attack by U.S. forces in the region. So we have every right to defend ourselves. And how to defend ourselves? We attacked, the U.S. bases. This is obvious. This is a very simple fact. And I hope that, and I'm sure that people would understand that.
No, people would understand it unless they're a corporate journalist, where you're incapable of understanding that because you internalize that the U.S. has the right to bomb everyone in the world and they can't defend themselves.
Well, also they're really they're shocked because they're used to people bombing, refugee camps, hospitals, journalists in tents. So they're like, wait, what is this whole thing where you're bombing military targets? I think that's another thing that is confusing them. I mean, yes, again, the premise is ridiculous. They're basically saying, well, if you're not going to build missiles that can reach the actual United States, then why are you doing any self-defense? But also, I think they are disoriented by the whole military targets.
I'm sorry to laugh, but it's so true. It's like, hey, like, what's going on with you bombing like a U.S. military site? It isn't like when a country bombs someone else, like what Israel does every day in Gaza, are they just supposed to go after hospitals and schools and children? Like, what's going on with going after the military? That's weird. I've never seen that before. I mean, yeah.
So it is so disgusting. Well, we have another great question coming up. Speaking of ridiculous questions and ridiculous premises, let's hear what Fareed Zakaria had to say to ask Rob Malley.
And Rob Malley is a former Obama, Clinton, and Biden administration official who helped negotiate the initial Iran nuclear deal that Obama reached in 2015. Biden brought him back when he took office. And that was one of the reasons why I was, at the outset of the Biden administration, genuinely excited about the prospect of peace, because Rob Malley is actually a diplomat. He actually believes in talking to people and reaching agreements. And what happened was next, Biden handcuffed him and prevented him from carrying out his mandate, which was to renegotiate the Iran nuclear deal that Trump broke. So basically, Biden, even though he brought back Obama's negotiator, Biden endorsed and pursued the Trump policy of sabotaging the Obama deal. So here's Rob Malley speaking to Fareed Zakaria.
I want to ask you, Rob Malley, a question that's always puzzled me. Why are the Iranians such bad negotiators? But why, by which I mean, when you were working for Biden, you guys tried to get them back into the Iran nuclear deal, and they just raised new demands and made it, as far as I can tell, very hard for you guys to find a way in. Now it's clear that Trump wanted a deal which would say, I got a better deal than the Obama deal. And the nuclear stuff is so complicated, the Iranians could have easily given him some concessions that would have allowed him to make that claim. But they always seem to stop shy.
Like, where's Fareed getting this from?
You know where he's getting it from? As he just admitted, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, it's like he's just imagining all of this. And
yeah, it's his
Rob
gut.
Malley is too polite to call him an absolute liar. But this is everything he's saying here is his fiction. He's like, those silly Iranians, they strung you along when you were in there. And then when Trump came back, they could have made a deal with Trump, but they didn't go the extra mile.
Yeah, he's so, I mean, it's so ridiculous that he's saying this stuff out loud. And, like the claim that that Iran was resistant to the nuclear deal, to re-entering the nuclear deal with Biden, that they were the obstacle to it. I mean, where it's again the exact inversion of the truth.
Rob Malley was the only member of the Clinton administration willing to expose the Clinton administration's lie that the Palestinians walked away from a generous peace deal in 2000. And I hope Rob Malley will continue in that tradition by exposing what a lie it is to say that, Biden tried in good faith to negotiate an Iran deal. He does a little bit obliquely, but hopefully one day he will be more forthcoming. But anyway, let's continue with Fareed's ridiculously premised question.
Of the concessions that would make the deal work. Is it that there's, is there a strategy here, or is it just, that they're sort of self-defeating?
Self-defeating.
That's a great question. I think it's a mixture of ideological rigidity and overestimation of their power and their capabilities, and that's been true along the way. Now,
can we just say that something that is probably relevant is the fact that the United States doesn't give a shit, or doesn't give a crap, or actually practice diplomacy? It's not actually Iran that's being the difficult one. And I like Fareed is really going deep into the psychology. Is it self-sabotage? Is it self-destructive?
Yes. Is it self-sabotage that Iran got Donald Trump to kill the Iran nuclear deal that they were respecting, and that Trump's own administration certified multiple times that Iran was adhering to the nuclear deal, and somehow like Iran self-sabotage because Trump decided to break the deal that Iran was respecting?
Yeah. I think Iran wasn't manifesting what they wanted to the universe. That's their problem. They subconsciously were blocking it with their negative vibes. Yeah. They really just need to read the book, The Power of Attraction or The Secret. One of those. Yeah.
They did conclude one deal with the United States in 2015, as you say. So I'm not sure that would qualify as bad negotiation. It depends on where you stand. And
see, Rob Malley's really polite there. He's like, he has to very gently remind Fareed Zakaria that Iran did reach a deal which they were respecting.
Right.
So the whole premise of your question, Fareed, is just complete nonsense. But anyway,
from their perspective, the fact that President Trump unilaterally tore it up changed even their perspective on the utility of negotiating with the United States. We can go back about why things didn't work out under President Biden. Obviously, I think there's some blame to go around, but basically, I think
that is Rob Malley's really polite way of saying that Biden sabotaged him. Amazingly, what happened with Rob Malley? I forgot this. You know what happened? As actually he was making progress, you know what happened? He was all of a sudden under investigation and then put on leave for mishandling classified documents. Remember that? Yeah. So he was actually sabotaged from within because there are people in the national security state who don't want to see people like Rob Malley succeed and conduct diplomacy. So he was sabotaged by his own colleagues in the Biden administration. And I have a pretty good idea of who it was, but I don't know for sure, so I'm not going to say. But let's just say it's people who've been very vocally supportive of bombing Iran and its allies. And so he was basically handcuffed, not only by, Biden not changing his position, but by literally being taken off the job because he was put under investigation. So he was put on ice, essentially, which he's not mentioning here because he's just way too polite. And he's being very diplomatic. But that's actually what happened. He was sabotaged.
Wow. There's a matter of principle for the Iranian regime about enrichment and about having a self-sufficient nuclear program, however absurd it is economically, and however much it gives rise to legitimate doubts and real suspicion about what their goals are. And as I said, they always seem to overplay their hand. They certainly did under President Biden when in August 2022 a deal was on hand, and they may have now. I would say one thing, though. I believe, and I still believe, although there's contradictory reporting at this point, that given the very credible threat of force that President Trump had assembled, that it had amassed, I think that if all President Trump wanted was a deal that he could credibly claim was better than the JCPOA, I think he could have achieved it. I think for the reasons we discussed earlier, President Trump viewed himself as a man of history, and he was not prepared to accept anything less than virtually total acceptance of his demands because he felt he had a real opportunity to go after this regime. So why waste it for the sake of a deal that might be marginally better than the JCPOA?
So again, a really polite way of Rob Malley saying, yeah, you actually could have reached a deal with Iran. It actually could have been even better from the U.S. point of view than the JCPOA. But Trump sabotaged it because he was listening to people like Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz and Benjamin Netanyahu telling him that Iran is weak. We've destroyed their economy. Their military is in a lax state. So let's seize the moment and have regime change. That's Rob Malley basically rejecting the entire premise of Fareed Zakaria's question. And let me show you this headline. This is what happened when Rob Malley tried to negotiate under Biden a new nuclear deal. So contrary to Fareed Zakaria's claim that it was the Iranians' fault they wouldn't make a deal, this is what happened. Biden's envoy, this is a headline from the Wall Street Journal a few years ago. Biden's Iran envoy wanted a nuclear deal. It may have cost him his career. That's exactly right. If you are trying to negotiate a diplomatic agreement with Iran, then your career is in jeopardy. That's what happened to Rob Malley, because as the Wall Street Journal notes there, Rob Malley, who was known for engaging adversaries and pushing the envelope on diplomacy, is under FBI investigation. That's exactly right. If you're Iran, you make a deal with the U.S., they're going to break it and bomb you. And if you're a U.S. diplomat trying to make a deal, you'll be put under FBI investigation. That's what happened to Rob Malley.
If you're a diplomat who engages in the crime of diplomacy.
Exactly right.
Yeah. You know, he was schoolmates in Paris because his family moved to France. He was schoolmates in Paris with someone who is a diplomat who doesn't do diplomacy, Anthony Blinken.
Yes, so that's why I call Blinken the Pompeo from Paris, is because he shares Mike Pompeo's ideology. He just happened to be schooled in a fancy French school. And him and Rob Malley used to debate a long time ago when they were school kids, the issues of West Asia. And unfortunately, people like Anthony Blinken won out in Washington, despite the best efforts of people like Rob Malley.
Yeah, that's why Blinken gets to be Secretary of State and Malley gets to be investigated by the FBI.
Exactly right. Okay. Well, geez, we have gone way over time.
But we got it. I mean, if I'm prepared to go, and because I mean, if you can, I don't know if you have other things to do, other commitments.
Let's turn to Rachel Maddow of MS Now. Now, if you remember, for the bulk of Trump's first term, there was this idea which consumed liberal energy that Donald Trump was conspiring with and being blackmailed by Russia. It's called Russiagate. Didn't quite pan out. And Rachel Maddow was the leading exponent of that conspiracy theory. And now that's no longer tenable. Like the whole Russiagate thing, you can't do that anymore. But Rachel Maddow is still on the hunt for a conspiracy between Trump and a foreign power. And you'd think maybe after Trump's first term, where he conspired with Israel to undermine a vote at the UN that would be critical of Israeli settlements, and after Trump moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, where he recognized Israel's theft of the Golan Heights and said openly that he's doing this at the behest not of Russian oligarchs, but of pro-Israel oligarchs like Miriam and Sheldon Adelson. You think maybe Rachel Maddow might clue in the fact that, hey, maybe the foreign power that I'm looking for here in terms of a conspiracy between with Trump is not Russia, but Israel.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel Maddow's not quite there yet, but she's found another suspect. So here it is.
Cui bono, right? Who benefits? It's always useful to start that question in any country. Who benefits? Who wants Iran bombed off the map and for their own reasons?
Great question, Rachel. I think you're on the case. Like we do. Is it maybe Israel, which has been lobbying Trump to bomb Israel for decades, or lobbying the U.S. to bomb Iran for decades, which participated in bombing Iran with Trump?
Which has said that they are, 1 week away from having a nuclear weapon for years. Yeah.
She's so close. She is so close.
Remember, she's a what do they call Oxford? Rhodes Scholar. A Rhodes Scholar. So she really gets it, and she sees through the obvious answers like Israel. So here, thank God she has that Oxford University education, so she can get to the truth. Okay.
And by the way, what she's doing here, you could basically take the script from one of her monologues in 2017 and 2018 when she kept saying, who benefits from what Trump did today in firing Jeff Sessions? It's Russia because he's doing Russia. So anyway, same Russiagate playbook, different country. But guess what? It's not the country that Trump is bombing alongside and is openly doing the bidding of. It's somebody else.
Who are Iran's rivals and enemies? Perennially, it's the Gulf Arab states, countries like Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and Qatar. You know,
we got our conspiracy. It's the Gulf states, everybody.
Yeah.
Trump is in cahoots with the Gulf states. Not
pulling the strings.
Pulling the strings. Not Israel, even though Trump openly brags that Mary Matelson basically gets him to do what she wants, and that he just bombed Iran alongside of Israel. But I think she's going to give like a passing mention to Israel.
She does,
but Qatar, the country that just gave Donald Trump a really, really nice $400 million plane, really a gilded flying palace for his own use, both during the presidency.
Speaking of gilded, I mean, Netanyahu also gave Trump a golden beeper. You want to talk about gilded gifts from foreign nations, from foreign governments?
During his presidency and after, Trump plans to take that plane with him and keep using it after he leaves office, if he ever leaves office. And you remember the United Arab Emirates, famous for recently structuring a totally pointless crypto financial transaction so that $2 billion of it would be stuffed into the Trump family's otherwise worthless brand new crypto financial firm. And of course, you remember the Saudis, who stuffed another $2 billion into the pockets of Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, just as Trump's first term in office came to a close. You might remember enough people were alarmed about that when it happened that the Trump folks actually sort of bothered to come up with an excuse for what made that okay. They said, don't worry, Jared will never again work for the U.S. government. He's never coming back to Washington. So it's okay that he's taken all this money from the Saudis now. We will never have to worry about having somebody involved in U.S. policy who has also just been given billions of dollars by Saudi Arabia, apparently for no reason. Well, that was the explanation when he took all that money from the Saudis at the end of Trump's first term. And now today, who has been leading the negotiations on behalf of the United States government with Iran before we just started this war with them today? I mean, Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Yeah, and who literally had Benjamin Netanyahu sleep over in his house as a child because his dad was so tight with him? Jared Kushner.
Right.
Which, of course, she's not going to mention. And yet, listen, you can certainly argue that there are some Gulf monarchies that are, you know, let's say not upset with Trump bombing Iran.
Yeah, especially Saudi Arabia.
But the idea that they pushed Trump into it, when again, they're now taking the brunt of Iran's retaliation because they host U.S. military bases. And when it's Israel that's been lobbying for this for decades, Netanyahu actually released a video on Sunday saying that Trump has done what I've been yearning for 40 years. And that's why Netanyahu took part in it. The fact that she's going to blame the Gulf states, not Israel, is just absolutely ridiculous. And the reason, I mean, look, I don't know her own personal reasons for this, but one problem with going after Israel is that Democratic leaders all support Israel, like Chuck Schumer. And Rachel Maddow, as a Democratic Party hack, is not going to defy the party line here. And look, she's also Jewish. And so maybe there's some like deep Zionism there. I don't know. I don't know what goes on in her mind. All I know is that she just goes out of her way to avoid the most obvious culprit. And wait, maybe do we hear her mention Israel?
Yeah, let's keep playing.
It was in St. Kitts this week. It wasn't him. No, it was Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, recently paid billions of dollars by Iran's chief rival, and nevertheless sitting there alongside Trump's tiny real estate friend, Steve Witkoff, who has sought recently to improve his considerable family fortunes by going to Qatar to seek money from its sovereign wealth fund. Weird that those talks didn't work, right?
Yeah. So
okay, well, so we didn't hear her, but she does. It's such a long rant, but she does a certain mention in passing that Israel did bomb Iran alongside Trump, but it was those evil Gulf tyrannies.
Yeah, what she says is, I mean, there's a lot of attention on Israel, and indeed, Israel and the United States have worked together in the bombing campaign. Not only the one that started today, but the campaign against Iran in June. But it is the Gulf Arab states who are a raid against Iran, who
Yes,
want
there we
Iran
go.
removed as their
Yeah.
regional rival. It is those countries that have have been assiduously buying up members of the Trump family. Yeah, how much money did he get from Miriam Sheldon and from AIPAC? And what about those investments that they're going to be getting from the Riviera in the Middle East? Anything to say there? Anything on that?
All right. Well,
By the way, Rachel Maddow has a Jewish grandfather, but she did grow up very Catholic.
okay. Well, listen, hey, who knows? All I know is it's just so hilarious how, like, after to push Russiagate for so long, she had to ignore all the available evidence, which showed Russiagate to be a complete scam. She also had to ignore the evidence that Trump was actually beholden to pro-Israel oligarchs, as was obvious even before he took office. Because even before he took office, in the transition period, he worked with Israel to try to sabotage a vote at the UN that Obama was going to let pass, critical of Israeli settlement building in the occupied West Bank. And the Trump team literally called foreign states and was like, hey, can you veto this for us? And they did this at the behest of Netanyahu, which was one of many cases of Israel collusion that it wasn't in line with their favorite conspiracy theory that Trump was really doing Moscow's bidding. So glad to see that continues. And it's a good way to end a very bleak show with a little bit of comic relief.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us. Katie, anything you want to plug the Katie Halper Show?
Oh, yeah. We're going to have a great show on Tuesday. We're going to have, let's see, we got Samira Moyahedin, who we, of course, had on Useful Idiots, and Sina Tusi. So one Iranian American, one Iranian Canadian.
And that's on Tuesday?
Tuesday, 7 p.m., youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show. Yeah.
Okay. That's our show. Our website is usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show, get bonus content. Thank you so much for watching Monday Morning. We'll see you next time.
Yes. Bye, everyone.